Y'all ever noticed that the loudest people in the world got the least peace? Everybody's shouting, everybody's arguing, everybody's trying to prove something. But Jesus climbed a mountain to teach. Not a palace, not a throne, just a hillside with ordinary folks sitting in the dirt. And I imagine it wasn't fancy either. Probably children running around, folks tired from work, and old people leaning on walking sticks, mamas holding babies. There stood Jesus. No spotlight, no microphone, just truth. And the first thing he said still turns this world upside down. Jesus looked at broken people and called them blessed. Now the world says blessed are the rich, blessed are the famous, the pretty, and the powerful. But Jesus said blessed are the poor in spirit, meaning blessed are the folks humble enough to know they need God. He said blessed are those who mourn. Imagine that, not mocked, not forgotten, blessed. Because heaven gets close to people with tears in their eyes. And then he said, blessed are the meek. Now, meek doesn't mean weak. It means strength that don't gotta brag. You ever met somebody who could command the whole room without ever raising their voice? That kind of strength that Jesus talked about. Then Jesus said, y'all are the salt of the earth. Now around here, salt matters. It preserves food, adds flavor, and keeps things from rotting. And I think Jesus meant that this world ought to get better when the Father's people show up. But somewhere along the way, some folks started using religion more like vinegar than salt. Mean, sharp, always condemning someone. Meanwhile, Jesus sat with sinners, touched the lepers, fed the hungry people, and loved folks that nobody else wanted. That's light. Not blinding people, but helping people to see. And then Jesus said something that probably made the whole crowd real uncomfortable. He said it ain't enough not to murder somebody. You can't hate them in your heart neither. Ain't that something? Because some folks never throw a punch at anyone, but yet they still wound people every day with gossip and cruelty, bitterness, and with pride. Jesus was teaching that sin starts long before the actions. Starts in the heart. And then came the hardest part. Jesus said, love your enemies. Now everybody likes preaching love until there's somebody difficult involved. Love people who agree with you, well, that's easy. But loving somebody that hurts you, well, that takes heaven's help. And you know, a woman one time whose husband had left her long before. Yet every Christmas, she would bake cookies and take to his sister that was sick. Didn't do it because the pain had disappeared. She did it because the love was bigger than the bitterness. That's a mountaintop kind of love. And Jesus said, when you pray, don't make a show out of it. Meaning God ain't impressed by your performance. You can pray a fancy prayer if you want to. But sometimes the holiest prayer sounds like, Lord, help me. And some of y'all know that those prayers hit heaven faster than long speeches. Then Jesus looked out over the hills and he pointed at birds. Can you imagine that? In the middle of his teachings, in the middle of his sermon, he started talking about birds and flowers. Look how God takes care of them. That he wasn't saying life would be easy. He was saying worry ain't stronger than the Father. Half the folks alive today are carrying tomorrow's troubles before tomorrow ever gets here. And Jesus will keep whispering, child, you never meant to carry all that alone. And near the end, Jesus told a story. He said one man built his house on sand, another on a rock. A storm came for both houses. Notice that. Both houses saw the storms. Faith ain't protected from storms. It's what keeps you standing in one. Some people build life on money, on popularity, on some politics and some pride. But the sand's always shifting. Jesus said, build your life on truth, on mercy, on forgiveness, and on the Father. And when Jesus finished teaching that day, I imagine folks sat there quiet. Because deep down they knew they hadn't just heard rules. They had heard the sound of heaven calling people back to love. So maybe the mountain ain't somewhere far away. Maybe it's right here. Maybe it's every time we choose mercy over cruelty, peace over rage, humanity over pride, forgiveness over revenge, we climb just a little bit higher. Well, that's enough from Uncle John today. Remember this, the world changes one heart at a time, and that's how mountains move. Folks, if you haven't accepted the Lord Jesus into your life today, I pray that you do so. Well, from Uncle John and the crew here, we love you, and we'll see you again.